What if I told you that you are not alone in the final moments of your life? That in the 3 minutes before death, when everything seems dark and frightening, someone very special crosses entire dimensions just to find you and take you safely to the spiritual world? Most people live tormented by the fear of death, imagining a cold and lonely void, when the truth is exactly the opposite, and Chico Xavier spent decades proving this through thousands of moving accounts. What happens when we die is not what you were taught in school, it is not what materialistic science insists on preaching, and it is definitely not the end of everything. Life after death is real, it is organized, it is loving, and there is a whole spiritual team working behind the scenes to ensure that you are welcomed with dignity at the moment of passing. You know that beloved family member who passed away and you never saw again? They are there, waiting, counting the days until the reunion. What you're about to discover in the next few minutes can completely transform your fear of death into profound serenity, because when you understand who is seeking you and how this sacred transition between worlds works, everything makes sense and life takes on a much greater purpose than you ever imagined. Before we begin this revealing journey, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. You might be saving someone from years of unnecessary anguish and fear. Imagine you are about to walk through a door you've never seen before, but always knew you would have to cross one day. In the first moments after death, the spirit undergoes an experience that challenges everything we know about the end. According to accounts by Chico Xavier and other respected mediums, there is an initial confusion, as if the person were waking from a deep sleep, but still trapped between two worlds. The physical body gradually loses its function, but consciousness remains, alive, pulsating, and often without fully understanding what has happened. What happens after death is a gradual process, where the spirit slowly releases itself from physical bonds, realizing that it still hears, feels, and exists. And it is precisely at this delicate moment that something extraordinary begins to happen, something that can bring immense comfort or profound confusion, depending on how each person has spiritually prepared for this inevitable passage. The fear of death doesn't stem from physical pain, but from the mystery it carries. It's the uncertainty of what comes after that tightens the chest and keeps so many people awake at night. Think about it. You're not afraid to sleep every night, even if you lose consciousness for hours, because you know you'll wake up. But when the subject is life after death, human beings freeze in the face of the unknown, creating mental phantoms far worse than reality. Chico Xavier always taught that understanding the spiritual world and what happens when we die is like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, everything that seemed frightening reveals itself as just harmless furniture and objects. The fear dissolves when you understand that death is merely a change of state, a natural passage like leaving home in the morning. And this understanding not only lifts the weight from your chest but transforms the way you live today. Because those who understand death learn to live with lightness and purpose. What happens after death involves a subtle and fascinating mechanism that Chico Xavier masterfully explained: the fluidic cord, a kind of energetic thread that connects the spirit to the physical body throughout incarnation. Imagine an astronaut tethered to a spaceship by a cable. While connected, he depends on that environment to survive, but when he is released, he gains the freedom to float. The disconnection from the physical body happens gradually, fiber by fiber, as if the spirit were being delicately untied from a garment it has worn for decades. In some cases, when the person lived with spiritual lightness and kindness, this process is quick and painless, almost like falling asleep and waking up in another place. But for those who clung too much to materialism or carry deep resentments, disincarnation can be more prolonged and confusing, because the spirit itself resists letting go of what it believed to be its only reality. Understanding this process is understanding that physical death is not a switch that turns everything off at once, but a respectful transition between the material world and the spiritual world. Life after death reflects exactly the kind of life you built here. It's like harvesting the fruits of the tree you planted and watered every day. Chico Xavier always emphasized that the spiritual world is not a place of unfair surprises, but rather of natural consequences. Those who cultivated love, kindness, and forgiveness find a luminous and peaceful welcome. Now, those who lived immersed in selfishness, cruelty, or indifference end up attracting environments and companions that vibrate at the same low frequency. Think of it like preparing a birthday party. If you invite loved ones, organize everything with care, and create a welcoming atmosphere, the celebration will be wonderful. But if you don't care about anything and leave everything neglected, the party becomes a disaster. What happens when we die depends directly on how we lived, the choices we made, and how much we dedicated ourselves to being better people. Therefore, true preparation for death doesn't happen in the last days of life, but in every gesture, every word, and every thought we cultivate while we are still here. You have never been alone on this journey. From the moment you were born until the moment of your passing, there is a spiritual guide accompanying every step, every choice, every stumble, and every victory. Chico Xavier revealed that this spiritual mentor is like an invisible older brother, someone who has already walked similar paths and now dedicates their existence in the spiritual world to helping you evolve. They do not interfere with your free will, but whisper inspirations, ward off dangers when possible, and, above all, support you at the time of death, when everything seems confusing and frightening. Think of them as that friend who waits for you at the door of an unknown place, ready to guide you through the corridors and introduce you to the right people. What happens after death would be much more difficult without this mentor, because they are the ones who organize the welcoming, who calm the newly departed spirit, and who explain, with infinite patience, that life after death is simply the natural continuation of existence. Recognizing the presence of this guide transforms the fear of death into confidence, because you know that, on the other side, there is someone who knows you deeply and loves you unconditionally, waiting with open arms. When death occurs, you are not simply thrown into a frightening void. There is a whole team of spiritual workers prepared to receive you with love and care, like nurses of the soul who know exactly what you need at that moment. Chico Xavier described these entities as dedicated and compassionate beings who chose to serve in the spiritual world, helping those who are arriving, still confused and frightened by the transition. They use healing energies, words of comfort, and even seemingly magical resources to calm the newly deceased spirit, dissolving the fear of death and showing that life after death is real and welcoming. Imagine arriving at a hospital after an accident and being greeted by a kind team that cares for each wound, explains what happened, and assures you that everything will be all right. That is exactly what these workers do. What happens after death depends a lot on our vibration, but even the most disturbed spirits receive some kind of help, because in the spiritual world charity and compassion are universal laws. Knowing that this loving welcome awaits on the other side should relieve any anxiety about what happens when we die. One of the most touching moments of disembodiment is when you finally see those you loved who have passed on before, grandparents, parents, children, dear friends, appear in the spiritual world to embrace you and tell you that everything is all right. Chico Xavier narrated countless accounts from spirits who described the indescribable emotion of reuniting with a mother who died decades ago, a child they lost young, or a spouse they missed so much, all there waiting with luminous smiles and open arms. But here's something important. Not all family members appear at the moment of disembodiment, and this doesn't mean abandonment. Sometimes some are in different evolutionary processes, reincarnated, or simply don't have the compatible vibration for that immediate encounter. Life after death works by the law of affinity. You attract and are attracted to those who share your feelings, your vibrations, and your values. What happens when we die is that true love always finds a way, always builds bridges between dimensions, and those who truly loved you will do everything to be there when you arrive. These reunions are not just emotional, they are therapeutic, because they show that love survives death and that true bonds are never broken. In the spiritual world, you don't go to a place determined by divine judgment, but rather by your own energy. It's like tuning a radio to a specific frequency and receiving exactly the type of music that station plays. Chico Xavier always taught that life after death works according to the law of vibrational affinity. Spirits who cultivated kindness, gratitude, and love attract luminous environments and elevated company, while those who lived in anger, hatred, and malice end up magnetized to dense and dark regions. Think of it like going to a party. You naturally gravitate towards people you identify with, who speak your language and share your interests, and avoid those who make you uncomfortable. What happens after death is exactly that. Your vibration determines your destiny, and no one can put you in heaven if you carry hell within you. Disincarnation reveals who you really are inside, without social masks, without pretense, only the pure essence of your soul. And that's precisely why working on your spirituality here and now, while there's still time, is so crucial. Because what happens when we die is simply the inevitable reflection of everything we cultivated in life. The umbral is not a fiery hell created by a vengeful god, but rather an intermediate region of the spiritual world where confused spirits reside, trapped in their own destructive thoughts and unhealthy mental patterns. Chico Xavier explained that the umbral is formed naturally by the vibratory density of those who lived selfishly, cruelly, or in a completely materialistic way, as if their own consciousness created a dark environment around them. Imagine someone who spent their entire life denying life after death, mocking spirituality, and living only for immediate pleasures. When death occurs, this spirit is literally lost, not knowing where to go, wandering in agonizing mental loops. What happens after death for these souls is not divine punishment, but a natural consequence. They cannot rise because they carry too much weight, like a balloon full of stones that cannot ascend. But here is the good news. The umbral is temporary, it is a school, it is an opportunity for learning, with the help of spiritual workers, the prayers of the incarnate, and above all, sincere repentance. Any spirit can leave there. The fear of death often stems from a lack of understanding about these processes, but when we understand that even the threshold has an evolutionary purpose, everything makes more sense. Those who lived believing that death is the absolute end, that nothing exists beyond the physical body, and that spirituality is nonsense, face a brutal shock when death occurs and they discover that they are still conscious, still thinking, still feeling. Chico Xavier warned that extreme materialism creates a terrible mental prison in the spiritual world. The spirit continues to deny its own existence even when dead, remaining trapped in a loop of confusion and despair that can last for years. It's like a person who insists they are in a dream and refuses to accept the reality around them, creating a self-imposed bubble of suffering. What happens after death for materialists is an agonizing internal struggle. Everything they believed crumbles, and they need to rebuild their entire understanding of life after death from scratch, often with resistance and anger. Think of a staunch atheist who mocked religious people. Suddenly he finds himself on a spiritual plane, conscious, but completely lost because he destroyed all the bridges that would help him understand where he is. The fear of death becomes even worse when you deny its existence, because then you don't prepare yourself, you don't seek understanding, and when the inevitable moment of death arrives, you are caught completely unprepared in a territory you insisted on denying. The prayers you offer for someone who has passed away are not words thrown to the wind. They are like threads of light that traverse dimensions and reach the spirit in the spiritual world, bringing comfort, energy, and even rescue from difficult situations. Chico Xavier constantly received messages from spirits thanking him for the prayers of family members, saying that those loving vibrations were the difference between remaining in darkness or finding the path to light. Imagine a shipwrecked person lost at sea at night, without hope, and suddenly seeing a lighthouse shining in the distance. That is exactly what prayer does for a spirit that is confused or suffering after death. What happens after death can be completely transformed by the love of those who remain. A mother praying for her child, a child interceding for their father, a friend who does not forget, all of this creates powerful energetic bridges that literally save souls. Life after death is not a lonely journey when there are those who remember you with sincere love. Because the fear of death dissolves when the spirit realizes that it is still loved, still remembered, still matters. And the most beautiful thing is that prayers work both ways. Elevated spirits also pray for us, creating an invisible network of protection and support that connects all planes of existence. True love is the only currency that matters in the spiritual world. You can take your fortune, your diplomas, or your fame to the grave, but only sincere and selfless love crosses the barrier of death and continues to live on the other side. Chico Xavier tirelessly repeated that life after death is governed by love. Those who truly loved, without expecting anything in return, build eternal bonds that become luminous bridges between dimensions. Think of that grandmother who cared for her grandchildren with absolute dedication, that friend who extended a hand without judgment, that father who worked hard to give dignity to his family. This pure love creates a magnetic force that guarantees a loving welcome at the moment of passing. What happens when we die is that all the masks fall away, and only the essential remains. Did you love? Were you loved? Did you spread kindness or bitterness? The fear of death disappears completely when you live with love in your heart, because you know that, on the other side, there is a multitude of hearts that beat along with yours, waiting to embrace you. There is no loneliness in the spiritual world for those who have cultivated genuine love, because love is immortal, indestructible, and more powerful than any force in the universe. Carrying bitterness, resentment, and a thirst for revenge is like tying stones to your feet before trying to swim. When death occurs, this emotional weight pulls you down, preventing you from reaching the luminous regions of the spiritual world. Chico Xavier taught that forgiveness is not a favor you do for the person who hurt you, but a liberation you achieve for yourself, releasing invisible chains that bind you to dense and painful vibrations. Think of someone who spent their entire life brooding over a betrayal, harboring hatred for an enemy, or planning revenge. What happens after death is that this person finds themselves trapped in those same toxic emotions, magnetized to the person they hated, creating a personal hell. Life after death reflects exactly the state of your soul. If you haven't forgiven, you will remain trapped. If you haven't asked for forgiveness, you will carry guilt as an unbearable burden. Sincere forgiveness, the kind that comes from the bottom of your heart, instantly raises your vibration and illuminates the path of disembodiment like a torch in the darkness. And here is the secret that few understand. Forgiving while there is still time, here on earth, is building your own luminous passage to the spiritual world, guaranteeing peace and lightness at the most important moment of your existence. Every act of kindness you perform, every helping hand extended to those in need, every word of comfort spoken with sincerity, is building, brick by brick, the spiritual team that will receive you when the moment of disincarnation arrives. Chico Xavier lived this in practice. He donated everything he had, served tirelessly those in need, and therefore knew that he would be received in the spiritual world with celebration, honors, and eternal gratitude from thousands of spirits he helped. Think of charity as planting seeds of light. You may not see the fruits immediately, but when life after death arrives, you discover an entire garden blooming to receive you with fragrance and beauty. What happens after death for those who were charitable is a welcome worthy of kings, spiritual workers, mentors, family members, and even strangers you helped appear to thank you and guide you with love. Charity dissolves the fear of death because you know, deep down, that you made a difference, that your passage through earth left positive marks, that you will be remembered with longing and gratitude. And you don't need to be a millionaire to be charitable. A genuine smile, attentive listening, a shared plate of food, all of that counts, and all of that awaits you transformed into light when you cross over to the other side. The great truth that Chico Xavier dedicated his entire life to proving is simple and liberating. Death does not exist. What we call death is merely a change of address, a change of clothes, a new beginning in a different dimension. What happens when we die is that we are freed from the limitations of the physical body and continue to exist, thinking, feeling, and evolving in the spiritual world, where true life happens with much greater intensity and clarity. Think of the caterpillar that transforms into a butterfly. It doesn't die, it simply abandons its old form to gain wings and fly. Disincarnation is exactly that, a natural and necessary metamorphosis for the evolution of the soul. Life after death is not a final destination, but an intermediate stage between one incarnation and another, a period of rest, learning, and preparation for new evolutionary challenges. The fear of death only exists because we have been taught incorrectly, because materialistic society insists on denying the obvious and keeping us ignorant about our true immortal nature. When you deeply understand that death is just a new beginning, a passage, a door that opens to new experiences, everything changes. You live better, love more intensely, and face challenges with courage, knowing that this life is just a chapter in an eternal and wonderful story. Now you know the truth that can change everything. Death is not the end, it's just the beginning of a new stage, and you won't be alone when that inevitable moment arrives. So answer me this, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue living in fear, wasting precious days on silly worries and petty conflicts? Or will you start today to build the spiritual life that will guarantee your luminous welcome in the spiritual world? How many people do you still need to forgive? How many acts of charity are you postponing? How much love are you failing to express because you are ashamed or proud? What happens after death depends entirely on what you do now, at this very moment, with the choices you are making. Chico Xavier showed us the way, the spirits sent us the messages, and now the responsibility is yours. Will you ignore all this and continue as before, or will you awaken to the reality that you are an immortal being merely passing through this planet? Life after death awaits you, and the team that will receive you is being formed by your actions today. Subscribe to the channel now, activate the notification bell, and continue this journey of spiritual knowledge with us. Because understanding death is only the beginning of a transformation that can illuminate not only your departure, but especially your life here and